Today we're gonna have a look at all of the Protoss units and structures in StarCraft Remastered. What I got for you today is a game right here that I am playing against absolutely nobody. We're not playing against anyone, but we're right here on Fighting Spirit to have a look at what all of the Protoss units look like. Now, of course, I did already make videos about the Terran as well as the Zerg pieces, so in case you missed those, I'll go ahead and leave links to them down below the subscribe button in the description of this video. Regardless, today we're just simply gonna talk about Protoss. Now, of course, Protoss, one of the most iconic races, you know, in really any kind of game ever. They're very, very well known throughout the gaming communities on the internet, and for good reason. They're absolutely awesome. I've actually been playing probably the most Protoss in StarCraft Remastered thus far. I've been really enjoying, in particular, the early game Dragoon pressure, although I'm probably gonna look back at this video in the future and realize how much of a noob I was at this game, and that's totally fine. I am okay with that. Anyway, I'm not gonna worry anymore about my mineral income and anything along those lines, by the way. We're just simply gonna try and construct at the very least one of each and every one of the units, and then the structures as well. Now, of course, in case you come from StarCraft 2, pylons are still going to be just as important as they are in StarCraft 2 as well. We can go ahead and just simply open up a warp rift like that, and we're going to be able to power up our buildings, as well as the fact that we gain some supply from creating these pylons. So pylons are just as important as they are in StarCraft 2. Now, of course, one major change that they made to StarCraft 2 compared to StarCraft 1 is the fact that you can, like, warp in units from, like, warp gates and whatnot. There is no such thing in StarCraft 1. We're going to have to build everything just like you do with the Terran and the Zerg pieces from the buildings themselves. Or I guess the Zerg ones are technically built from larva, but regardless, you get what I'm trying to say. Anyway, I'm producing my very first assimilator right there, and I guess we'll go ahead and produce 2 gateways right here too. Now, one thing that I've realized, right, whenever you try and produce anything out of a gateway, is the fact that there is no, like, animation whatsoever on the gateway. For some reason, there is nothing like that available right now. Now, of course, I'm gonna go ahead and create another pylon right here as well, but I'll show you exactly what I mean here in just a second. But of course, by the way, since I am playing Remastered, I can, of course, switch to the good old 1998 graphics right here at the press of a button, just by simply pressing the F5 key on my keyboard right here to show you exactly what it used to look like, and then we can switch back as well whenever we please. Anyway, so I can indeed go ahead and rally these buildings, right? But as soon as I produce my very first unit, and that's gonna be a Zealot, look at the building change. There's nothing. There's nothing, and that is something that StarCraft 2 players will have to get used to. You don't actually know if you're constructing anything out of these things, other than just simply, you know, knowing the timings by heart, as well as, you know, just continuously checking whether or not you're actually building something. Anyway, let's go ahead and produce a couple of pylons down here as well, so we can power some more units here in just a little bit. But there we go. I'm producing 2 Zealots. Now, Zealots, of course, some of the most well-known units as well in StarCraft lore. Definitely very iconic. Compared to the StarCraft 2 one, they feel quite a bit more powerful. They actually do a lot of damage. And they still hit in, like, you know, the swipes like they do in StarCraft 2 as well with their side blades. Now, of course, just like with many other units in this game, they do have a speed upgrade as well that we'll go over in just a little bit, so I will be able to showcase to you how fast they are. But as they are right now, they're going to be a solid early game defense as well as offensive unit, particularly against the Zerg. Next up, and that is going to be one of the most iconic buildings as well, of course, we're going to build up our Cybernetics Core. Now, the Cybernetics Core uploads and unlocks, rather, a whole lot of additional tech right here that we are otherwise not going to be able to create, so that is one of the most important buildings here for sure. On top of that, there's a couple more things that I can also produce. I can create myself, of course, the Forge. The Forge is going to be good for upgrades, and let's actually go ahead and build them off in the corner right here. The Forge is going to be good for upgrades. So, of course, that is never something, you know, that we need to worry about. And on top of that, we can also create a shield battery. Now, I don't think shield batteries are very common in professional StarCraft play. But for example, I'll show you exactly what it does here in just a little bit. You can gain the shields back on your units by using a shield battery. Not any of the structures, sadly, but only on the buildings. So say, for example, my Zealots are going to be hurt. The one right here, for example, just got sliced at. I mean, I guess we can go ahead and do the exact same thing once again. We'll take a little bit of damage on him. Just like that. If I now right-click my Protoss Zealot right here on the shield battery, it will regenerate some life once again. Or shields, rather. Not regenerate life, but it will regenerate some shields to stay alive for a little while longer. And I'm sure there are build orders out there that will indeed make use of the shield battery, but for the most part, it is a little bit tricky to pull off. Now, of course, we can also create a photon cannon, just as iconic as many of the other buildings for the Protoss, but that's going to be a cannon that we can use to shoot at our enemies. Now that the cybernetics core is done, we can not only upgrade a bunch of the units here, and in particular, of course, the singularity charge, very important, but we can now also create the Dragoon. Now, the Dragoon in StarCraft 2 obviously doesn't really exist in the multiplayer version of the game, but it's sort of like a more beefy version of the Stalker. I mean, they still hit up. You know, they're quite powerful, actually. They feel a little bit stronger than the Stalker, I suppose. They don't have Blink, of course, but one important thing to keep in mind about these units is that their pathing is probably the, like, they have some of the worst pathing in the game. I mean, what I mean with that is the fact that sometimes you move them down a ramp and they just simply walk to the opposite side of the map. And you're like, why? You know, for example, I can send this guy down the ramp and he just simply won't go. Let's see if he actually decides to sneak by. Wow, that was actually some of the best pathing I've ever had on those units. But in particular, once you get a couple of them moving out on the map, they have a tendency to just simply not listen. But anyways, of course, the Dragoon and the Zealot, they are going to be some of the most typical units here for the Protoss army. I think next up, it's time to get a little bit of tech. So we'll focus on the other gateway units here first. In order to do so, we're going to need to get the Citadel of Adun. The Citadel of Adun, for those of you that are familiar with StarCraft 2, it's sort of like a, a Twilight Council in a way where it unlocks an upgrade for the Zealots to get them additional Zealot movement speed, as well as the ability to tech up towards the Templar. Now, opposed to StarCraft 2, there is not going to be two different buildings for the Templar. All you need is a Templar Archives, and you can start producing both the Dark Templar as well as the High Templar. So, of course, those are going to be, you know, it's going to be quite a bit of difference, with the, you know, difference, of course, also being that you still need one of these structures to continue researching and teching up on the Protoss ladder. So, here we go. Citadel of Adun is just finishing up. We can indeed start researching the Protoss leg upgrade, and I'll show you exactly how much of a speed increase that is in just a little bit. Go ahead, guys, just make a little bit of a rally that way and just move back and forth. We'll go ahead and research that. And next up, we'll also get one of the more important tech structures, and that is indeed going to be the Templar Archives. So the Templar Archives will give us access to both the Dark Templar as well as the High Templar, and we're going to create two of each for good reason. So let's keep an eye out right here on that research right here. It's still going to be a little while, so I think just to make sure that this video doesn't take like 2.5 hours, we'll go ahead and construct the other two tech paths as well. We got the Stargate as well as the robotic facility. So let's produce one of each. Let's actually put them right next to each other. We got the Stargate and we got the robotics facility. We'll go over what those do in just a little bit, but for now, let's keep an eye out right here on the Zealots as well as those Templar. So this one is going to be producing 2 High Templar, and the other gateway is going to be producing 2 Dark Templar instead. So here we go, 2 Dark Templar and 2 High Templar. Now, High Templar are, you know, just the same as they are in StarCraft 2. As far as I recall correctly, they don't have feedback, but they still got the most iconic spell known as the Psionic Storm. And Psionic Storm, of course, very, very important for many reasons. And I guess just for example's sake, we'll go ahead and research it right here as well. Secondly, we got the Dark Templar. Dark Templar, of course, extremely powerful here too. Now, do they have their Zealot leg upgrade yet? Yeah, there they go. Look at them. They move so much faster. Speed upgrades in this game are incredibly important. They move so much faster. Anyway, Dark Templar, very, very important units. The Dark Templar is actually quite interesting. I've learned this the hard way as well. So, sometimes you hear your units are under attack, right? For example, when your opponent drops units inside of your mineral line. The interesting part is, in StarCraft 1, the fact of the matter is that Dark Templar one-shot workers, right? So, if I bring one unlucky probe over, I'll show you right here that it one-shots it. Now, the fact that it gets one shot right there, rather than it remaining with a little bit of HP, is actually a big difference. Because sometimes you will not know that your units are under attack. If a Dark Templar manages to sneak into your mineral line, you will not hear that your probes are under attack. Because the way that damage gets registered is different than if a unit gets one shot. So if a unit gets one shot, like for example the Dark Templar does right there, you don't actually get a notification that your probes are under attack, which is a very, very big deal, and something that can be very frustrating, of course, if you are indeed playing the game. Now in this game there are, of course, Archons, right? And compared to StarCraft 2, you actually have 2. You got the, you know, the standard Archon. I was almost going to say High Archon, but no, you got the standard Archon and then the Dark Archon as well. So if you morph in the Dark Templar, they're going to morph into a Dark Archon right there. And the Dark Archon is a little bit different from your more standard Archon that you also have in StarCraft 2, in the sense that it's only a spellcaster. So it's got a bunch of spells right here that you can research in the Templar Archives, and right there it is. By default, it's only got feedback, which is of course not going to be a spell on the High Templar, but instead it's going to be a spell right here on the Dark Templar. or on the Dark Archon rather, and, you know, while it doesn't have a basic attack, it's got mind control as well, which is a very, very powerful spell. It's sort of like, for those of you familiar with StarCraft 2, once again, sort of like a more powerful version of Neuroparasite. It's got Maelstrom too. I don't really want to go over all of the abilities, but that is what we got right here. And of course, if I switch back to the good old, you know, classic settings right here, it may be a little bit easier to actually distinguish exactly where the units are. I mean, they got this like pretty hard outline, I suppose, but I gotta be honest, I definitely do like the look of the remastered version. So here we got Storm. Now, Storm is gonna be 75 energy each, right? So let me show you exactly what it does right here. Storm in this game is absolutely terrifying. It does, of course, do friendly fire, so we got a Protoss Dragoon right here. We can put both of them together, I suppose, and as well as my Dark Archon. High Templars do still deal bonus damage, or rather, do still do friendly fire with High Templar Storm. So it is pretty important that you keep that one in mind, because the amount of damage it does is very substantial. Look at that. Both of those Dragoons just took so much damage. Another thing to keep in mind about the High Templar, and any spellcasters in the game for that matter, is that the spells, generally speaking, do not stack, right? However, smart casting is not a thing. So if your High Templar are gonna be in range of something to cast, right? For example, if I try and cast Psionic Storm right here on top of that gateway, and both of my Templar are gonna be in range, notice their energies. With one click, both of them will activate their Storm, but Storm does not actually deal additional damage. It does not stack if you cast it 2 times at one particular position. That's a big deal. You gotta make sure that you spread out your High Templar if you want to effectively cast, because otherwise you're gonna waste all of the energy before you're even gonna be able to get your units over there. Now, of course, you can indeed morph these guys into Archons as well, just like you can with, you know, the Dark Templar right there to create a Dark Archon. But we got the standard Archon right here, which is a little bit different. It does have a basic attack. It is going to be, you know, very powerful, of course, for very many reasons. But opposed to the Dark Templar, or the Dark Archon one, it does not have any spells right here. Alrighty, so that is the gateway units covered right there. Of course, one of the more popular upgrades as well is indeed the Singularity Charge. It's essentially like the Warp Brigade upgrade from StarCraft 2, I suppose. It's very common to see this one in pretty much every single matchup, with maybe the exception of Zerg versus Protoss. Although I'm not all too familiar on the current meta in StarCraft 1. Regardless, though, it will increase the Dragoon range, and of course the Dragoons are some of the earliest units that can come out, and they're extremely good. And I've actually won quite a bunch of games with just like making 2 Gateway Dragoon and then switch into a quick expansion. Just by simply making up to like 5 Dragoons, you can easily safely expand and still do a lot of pressure to your opponent. So they're very, very powerful units there. So those are the Gateway units right here. Next up, we'll go over some of the Stargate ones. So by default, I can make a Scout as well as a Corsair. Now, generally speaking, I don't think Scouts are considered to be very popular at all. But there's 2 more buildings here that are also Stargate relevant. So the first one you'll be familiar with, you know, at least if you've played StarCraft 2, and that is going to be the Fleet Beacon. That's pretty important. And then the last one is also the Arbiter Tribunal. Now, Arbiters, of course, are a very iconic unit from StarCraft 1 as well. They are not quite available in StarCraft 2, unless you are playing Phoenix in the co-op version of the game, if I'm not mistaken. But you can sort of regard those as like mini motherships. So we'll go ahead and produce one of each of all of these Protoss units. We'll make sure to get a bunch of them, and I think I'm actually going to need another pylon as well. So let's just go ahead and create one. Go on. There you go. I'll also queue up a carrier here very shortly. Carrier, of course, very, very iconic too. So here's the Scout, by the way. Scout does a little bit of damage. It's much better against air. So it deals, well, you can see like there, 28 damage right there to air, and only 8 damage to ground. So that's going to be quite helpful. Secondly, we are also getting ourselves a Corsair, which is also one of the most typical units, of course, for the Protoss arsenal, in particular with its disruption. Where is it? Disruption Web, right there. Of course, it's the last ability that I mouse over. There it is. It's a good day to die. You can indeed nullify a lot of damage that way. They can still do a little bit of damage to air as well, but it's not that amazing. Not quite as amazing as that of the Scout. Look at that. Okay, guys, be friends now. Next up, we'll go ahead and create a carrier as well as a Corsair. Now, both of these units do take quite a bit of time to create, so I think we'll just simply rally towards right over there or so, and we'll look back at that in just a minute. Next up, we got the units right here from the robotics facility. Now, the robotics facility also does have 2 additional structures that you can create. So first off, we got the robotics support bay. That allows us to create the Reaver right there, and we also have an observatory. Now, the observatory is going to be a necessity if you want to create any kind of detection here whatsoever, besides, of course, a photon cannon, because we cannot actually create observers without the observatory. Now, notice the observatory does build extremely quickly, so even if you, forgot putting it down, you can still quickly build it. But let's go ahead and create our very first unit right here, known as the Shuttle. Now, like I said, there's no warping in right here like you can in StarCraft 2, so the Shuttle is essentially like the dropship from the Terran that we already saw, where it's gonna be a unit that you load up with units and then fly across the map. You can't like warp in on the other side of the map and, then load units in there, and definitely nothing like a warp prison where you can actually use it not only for dropping but also for warping in. Secondly, we got the Reaver. Now the Reaver is a big splash damage dealer that we'll see here in a minute, and of course I'll also produce myself and actually I think we're gonna go up to 2 Reavers right here, but we'll also go ahead and produce an observer that I'll just simply queue up because the carrier should be out here in just a second. And there, by the way, is the shuttle, so we're gonna be able to load up units into that thing. Get in there. And we could go ahead and, well, I guess do a Maelstrom drop or something along those lines. Anyway, I don't think it's going to be all too helpful. But the shuttle is very crucial for the Reavers that I'll go over in just a little bit. So here we got the carrier. Now the carrier, it doesn't attack by default. It's got no attacks. Opposed to StarCraft 2, you have to actually build the interceptors. The interceptors do not auto-build, so you have to make sure that you produce those yourself right here as well. Now, there are going to be quite a couple of upgrades right here, like, for example, the carrier capacity that will make it a little bit easier for you. Actually, I did not make an Arbiter. I was going to say that's producing way too quickly. That's a Corsair right there, Lowko. Of course, I can indeed go ahead and produce myself a bunch of these interceptors. And the interceptors are, just like they are in StarCraft 2, powerful little ships that cost individual money. 25 minerals right there to get one of them out. And if you've got a bunch of carriers, don't forget to build them and make sure to get some of these upgrades right here as well. Let's wait until the final one is available, and then I'll go ahead and show you what it looks like by attacking my own Dragoon. So it's a pretty straightforward thing, just like it is in StarCraft 2. It's, of course, the big capital ship right here. And there's actually quite a bit of micro involved right here. I can easily retarget units with the interceptor. So while it may look like they're randomly flying about, they're actually target fireable, I suppose. That's not even a word, but you get what I'm trying to say. They're actually really good, and just like in StarCraft 2, you can create a very nice death ball if you so desire. So there we go, the Protoss carrier, very powerful unit as well. Now what I really want to show you is the next ability right here, the Protoss Arbiter. Let's get some of the upgrades right here as well for it. So we got a Recall. Now Recall is one of the most powerful abilities in the game. We got Stasis Field, we got the other one right here as well. I'm only gonna get Recall right here. It's gonna take a bit of energy before or it's gonna take a little bit of time before we really get to see what exactly it does, but you'll see in a second. You'll see what I mean. Anyway, next up we got the Observer. Now the Observer, I mean, it's the Observer. What do you expect? I mean, once again, I can show you what the classic one looks like. A little bit easier to spot, maybe. The new one is a little bit more rounded, I guess, and it can be tricky to lose track of it. But, the same can really be said right here for the original graphics here in, if you're used to those. You can still easily lose track of where exactly your observer is located. Now, let's send these guys across the map. Just go ahead and fly across. The Arbiter is going to have to save up 150 energy, if I'm not mistaken, to get the recall going. And I'll show you exactly what that does in a little bit. And in the meantime, we'll look at the Reaver. Now, the Reaver, it once again, just like the carrier, also needs to have its ability, the Scarab, manually built. By default, it doesn't actually have any attacks. So that is a rather important thing right here to keep in mind. Plus, they're super slow. I mean, you can do a lot of splash damage with them, and you can give them, more Scarab damage, as well as, more capacity right there. And I'll go ahead and actually research the gravitic drive right there to increase the speed of the shuttle. But these things are not particularly fast, right? However, they do deal a lot of damage. So you can see that? Just look at the damage output of these little things. Plus that splash damage as well. They are extremely good. Now, the way they are usually used in professional StarCraft 1, right, and most of the games, is indeed in combination with a shuttle. If you get yourself the graviton drive, which I'm currently researching, you're gonna get additional movement speed right there on the shuttle. Plus, you can load these things in. So, say for example, your opponent has spawned over here. You can imagine what happens if you unload, what are they called? The Reavers right over in this area. They're gonna be able to do a lot of splash damage. And so the Reaver drop was born. So Reavers, very, very important unit. And very, very powerful as well. And for now, Reaver, you can go ahead and move over here and just simply unload your units right there in the center of the map. So those are all of the robotics facility units. Those are all of the gateway units. And those are all of the all of these Stargate units as well. Now here we got the Arbiter. Now the Arbiter is extremely good. It's actually 150 energy, so we're not quite there just yet. But the Arbiter is sort of like a mini mothership. Look at it. It will be able to cloak things quite easily. So that makes it quite easy. Actually, I think... yeah, we're gonna have to make sure that we get some more upgrades on it. But regardless, it doesn't really matter here for the time being. The reason why I wanted to show you this unit, besides it, you know, obviously being really good, is the fact that it's got a recall. Now, in StarCraft 2, you got recall as well, right? You can recall towards a nexus. However, this unit is different. I can recall units that are already out on the map. So say, for example, these guys are fighting, right? They're like, you know, having an engagement right here in the center of the map. I can actually teleport units towards the Arbiter. So rather than my Arbiter being near this engagement and, you know, teleporting units back home, I can actually just simply put down my circle right here, cast a recall ability, and units right there will be cast towards the Arbiter. That means that if you've got, like, you know, 2 or 3 or so Arbiters, you can recall your entire army, get them to safety, and even cloak units just like that as well. An extremely powerful unit. Of course, you can recall Arbiters towards Arbiters as well to create a bit of a train, I guess. And they're not even that slow. I mean, they're not super fast, but they're not even that slow. Now, did we already finish up the robotics bay upgrade right here? I think we did. Where is my shuttle? Where's the shuttle? Oh, there it is. It's a little tricky to spot sometimes. But it's going to be able to fly around quite a bit faster right now. And as I mentioned already, upgrades in this game for speed are very helpful. There's a lot more upgrades to mess around with as well. I don't really want to show you all of those. Let's make sure that we get all of the buildings taken care of. Arbiter Tribunal Observatory. I think we have built every single one of the buildings, as well as the structures that are indeed available for the Protoss unit. So here they are once again in all their glory with the original, the OG textures, the OG graphics. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button down below. And if you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get a notification as soon as I upload more. And other than that, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? And I will see you in the next one.